Hola there, my beautiful friends, and welcome back to the Duality of Life podcast. My name is Julia. Super grateful to welcome you into this one. Today I want to talk about love. The confusing, confronting, scary, weird, messy, delicious, yummy, gross thing that we all want. Maybe not all, but a lot of us. A lot of us want that thing. And it's challenging for a lot of us. A lot of us have mental health conditions that make it really, really difficult to be vulnerable or to feel like we are worthy of love. And in my last episode, I talked about toxic shame, and I think many mental health disorders, almost all mental health disorders, can be linked to shame, or shame is somewhat involved in them, or some people believe, like John Bradshaw, especially in his book, Healing the Shame That Binds Us, just connects so many mental health disorders, addictions, things of this nature to toxic shame. Shame is totally normal human emotion that we all need, like I've said in the last episode, but toxic shame becomes overwhelming. It's the belief that we are unlovable, unworthy, unwanted, unchoosable, disgusting, gross, wrong. We are just all of these nasty things. And there's no part of us that actually believes that we are lovable, that we are worthy. Maybe we understand it like logically, but our body doesn't feel that due to whatever the circumstance was that took that away from us, took that knowing, that inherent belief, that inherent just thing that we are, which is lovable. All of us are lovable. There is no one that is broken, so broken that cannot be loved or cannot be held in some way with some level of compassion. Now, I'm not saying like we should let the murderers out or like anything of that nature. People that do bad things should be punished for those bad things. But there should be an underlying knowing that there's probably a reason for it. You know, some people, their brains are wired differently and it makes them more prone to these behaviors. But a lot of people, a lot of criminals or addicts, abusers have been abused themselves in some way. And many of us that have mental health conditions like chronic depression or anxiety, multiple personality disorder, as I've already mentioned, addictions of all kinds, these sorts of things, a lot of them have been linked to toxic shame, which, like I've said, is this belief that we are unlovable. To be able to accept love from another person, to be able to hold a healthy relationship, to have a healthy relationship, there has to be a level of us, a belief inside of us that we are lovable, that we are worthy, because a healthy relationship cannot exist without vulnerability. And a lot of these things make us struggle with vulnerability. For myself, I have complex PTSD. Complex PTSD is a little bit different than PTSD because it's typically linked to like prolonged span of time where multiple events on different occasions, different locations, different maybe even people have abused us. Usually this comes from childhood, but it could happen later in life. There's so many different weird circumstances and situations that people get into in this weird and wonderful thing that we call life. But a lot of us will struggle with complex PTSD because of childhood trauma. When we believe that we are unlovable from a child, toxic shame can start developing in a child from, I believe, 18 months to about 3.5 years. That is such a young little being to have this belief that they are unlovable taken away from them. They are making connections in their brain based on the situations that they are in that make them believe that they are not worthy of love, that they have to get that love in some way by manipulating the situation. Maybe that's throwing a tantrum, maybe that's acting really, really good so that way the parent doesn't get mad at them. This can also not even be from actual abuse, but it could be from emotional neglect in a way, which I would categorize as abuse, but I know some people only really categorize it as like neglect, like actual physical neglect, physical abuse, sexual abuse, this nature of things. But if a parent is toxic shame bound, then they're not going to be able to regulate their child's emotions. And that can be really difficult for the child to understand like what's actually going on. They're like, I don't have someone to mirror my emotions. I don't have someone to regulate me because I am not capable of regulating myself yet. And then the parent is not capable of regulating themselves. So then you just have this child that's deeply confused, this parent that doesn't know how to regulate themselves, which then can also create toxic shame. Why I'm saying all of this is because understanding where this belief that we are unlovable, understanding where these toxic relationship cycles are coming from, understanding why we keep ending up with the quote unquote same person again and again, or why we keep learning the same lesson again and again, is because we believe that we are not lovable. But that is so far from the truth. And we have to learn this lesson. We have to understand that we are lovable, but it's not going to be a flip of a switch. It's not going to be, oh, I've listened to this podcast and now I believe that I'm lovable. You have to slowly evolve as a person and learn how to hold space for yourself, learn how to be compassionate towards yourself, learn how to love yourself. So that way you can bring that into a relationship and respond in a healthy way, respond in a regulated way, because toxic shame can also be linked to codependency, and codependency can be linked to what I just described, the parent not being able to regulate themselves, the child not having a mirror for their emotions to help them navigate this confusing, complex emotional state that they are, growing from a baby to an adolescent to an adult. When you don't have somebody to mirror and communicate the emotions that you are experiencing, it makes this whole life thing really, really confusing. And so then we're constantly seeking validation outside of us. That could be to validate our own belief that we are unlovable, which is that toxic relationship cycle. We continuously choose people that in our gut we know are not right for us, or that are obviously gaslighting us to the outside viewer, are obviously abusing us to the outside viewer, and we are unable to see it in some ways because we have those rose-colored glasses on. But I don't think those rose-colored glasses are actually rose-colored glasses. I would say that they're black. Rose-colored glasses can be nice if you have two regulated adults ready to come together and do the work together, because no one is perfect. You can't be perfect and then find a perfect person and then, whoa, yay, like everything's gonna be great now. That's not realistic. But what is realistic is for one adult to be working on themselves, learning how to love themselves, showing up for themselves consistently, learning how to regulate themselves and see through the bullshit of manipulation, gaslighting, all of these things. And you have another adult doing the same thing. And both adults are just trying their best. They're like, okay, both of us are trying our best. Let's try our best together. And therefore, healthy relationship. Yay. So glad I broke that down in such a complex way for you. But codependency, constantly seeking that validation outside of us, we could be seeking those negative thoughts about ourselves. So yeah, in come the abuser, in come the manipulator, in come the gaslighter, in come, XYZ that is going to hurt us because we believe that we are not lovable. So then we invite people that validate that belief about ourselves. We could also have this grandiosity towards ourselves. Narcissistic personality disorder is also linked to toxic shame. And this is a person that is going to be the abuser. They're going to be the gaslighter. They're going to be the manipulator. And they also struggle with the same belief of not believing that they are lovable. So this creates a situation where they are overexerting themselves. They are they're trying to, put the rose-colored glasses on someone's face. They're shoving the rose-colored glasses over someone's face without the other person understanding what's going on. They're just like, put these on! Ah! And the other person's like, okay, I will. And that's because they don't believe that they are lovable without forcing the person to see the good in them. They have to force that person to love them. They have to force, by manipulating, by gaslighting, by abusing another person, to get the love that they really are desiring. Both ends of the spectrum are, obviously dreadful. And just because one person is the abuser, I'm not validating that at all. But a lot of the time, these people are also struggling with toxic shame and believing that they are unlovable. For them, it can be a little bit harder in some way to actually seek help, because how they've coped, how they've managed this belief that they are unlovable is having grandiosity towards themselves. So they believe that they are the best. They believe that they have to be perfect. They are overachievers. They're workaholics. They are trying to be the best ever. And so they have this like authoritative, grand idea of themselves that would make it hard for them to admit, like, oh, maybe I have done wrong, or maybe I have messed up, or maybe I have said something bad, or maybe I didn't hold space for that person, or maybe I didn't have compassion towards that person. They're gonna be like, no, what I did was right because of this, and this. And that can make it really hard for somebody to start therapy. That can make it really hard for somebody to take the rose-colored glasses off of themselves while they're looking at themselves in the mirror and see, oh no, I actually hurt this person because of XYZ. I actually did this the wrong way because XYZ. I need to go to therapy. I need to talk to somebody. I need to make sure that I'm not, creating the cycle of abuse that I probably grew up in. And all of these things just make love in relationships so confusing. But on the other end of the spectrum, if you are in a relationship right now where you are being manipulated or gaslit, struggling with abandonment, you don't know when they're going to text you back, you feel unregulated by this relationship because they are not regulating themselves, they're not showing up, even though you've committed to a relationship with them and they've committed to a relationship with you, and they're not able to actually hold space for that relationship. Maybe they want a girlfriend, or maybe they want a boyfriend or a partner, but they're not willing to actually dedicate themselves to the relationship. That's a problem, and we need to address that and look at ourselves of why we are choosing to be with somebody that cannot show up for the actual relationship. We need to show up for ourselves. We need to show up for the other person. We need to show up together for the relationship. And if one or both parties are not looking at the underlying belief that they are unlovable, that they are unworthy, if they are unacceptable, if they are dirty or gross, then these people are not going to be able to show up for themselves, for one, show up for each other, and definitely not going to be able to maintain or hold a healthy relationship. But you are so lovable and so worthy and so deserving of a beautiful future, a calm future, a regulated future, a happy future, a well future. It's not realistic to be happy all of the time, but sometimes we can just be well. We can learn how to navigate the dysregulation. We can learn how to hold space for ourselves. We can learn how to speak kindly to ourselves. And this is an evolution. Maybe a new thing comes up that we've never had to deal with, and bam, those triggers are up again. Our triggers, our defenses, our intense emotions are triggered, are present again. And that is okay. You are human. Jealousy is a normal emotion. Shame is a normal emotion. Envy is a normal emotion. Guilt is a normal emotion. All of these more difficult and quote unquote negative emotions that we experience are human. They are here for a reason. They have helped us survive through evolution. For so many, a variety of different reasons, they are present inside of us. But it's only when they become toxic that they are a problem. So for instance, maybe you're in a long-term relationship and your partner is like, oh, I've met somebody at work and they are a great person and we have so many common interests, but they're the opposite sex. It is so normal to have jealousy in that situation. That is a normal and completely reasonable circumstance to carry jealousy. And it's important and beautiful to express that to your partner, and hopefully your partner can listen to you and hold space for you and recognize, oh, okay, like if my partner is feeling with it like this, I value them more than this person that I don't even really know. We've just both like basketball, or we just both like knitting, or whatever the case is. We have a common interest, but I don't know them. We aren't friends for a long time, or whatever the case is. I don't have to be that close with them. I don't have to be friends with them if my partner is feeling that intense jealousy. And I'm not saying that you can't go out and live life and have opposite sex friends. That is totally unrealistic, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with opposite sex friends. I think it's just important to recognize and hold space for a partner and those emotions that are more difficult, and not feed into your partner's emotions. Oh yeah, you're feeling jealous? Well, I'm not gonna stop talking to them, or I'm gonna go out with them on Friday because I want to, and you can't do anything about it. It would also be unhealthy for the person experiencing the jealousy to be like, you can't talk to them. I hate you for talking to them. Like, you have to delete their number. You can't like even talk to them at work. You can't even look at them at work. I don't want you to go to the office anymore, blah, blah. Like, both are unhealthy. Both are not a healthy relationship. To recognize and hold space for that other person's jealousy, for that other person's difficult emotion, and be like, okay, like I'm not gonna feed into that just because I need to stand my ground. You guys have to meet each other in the middle and be like, I'm experiencing this feeling of jealousy because I don't know this person. I don't really know what your dynamic is like. You know, I really care about this relationship. I really care about you. And I'm experiencing jealousy because of these things. A way for that other person to respond is like, I totally understand that and see that. And if I was in your position, I would probably feel the exact same way. So how can we resolve this? Maybe we all go out together. Maybe we become friends together. We see if maybe that other person has a partner and we can double date and flow from there. That could be a common ground that you guys find, or it could just simply be like, yeah, that's totally reasonable. I just won't navigate that relationship with a full-blown friendship dynamic. I will be their coworker and we can have camaraderie and, you know, make it light and easy at the office, but we don't have to be more than that. And all of this to say that when we experience these difficult emotions, we have to be able to express them in a way that another person can hear them. And when that other person can show up and hear them, and you guys can negotiate them, that is so beautiful and what we all should be working towards and desiring and believing is possible as well. So that's to say, we shouldn't settle for less, basically. But for a variety of reasons, toxic shame can take that ability away from us. It can make us so fearful that we don't even think our own emotions are really valid. And we may manipulate the situation. We may say the wrong things. We may completely shut down and never communicate how we feel out of fear that this emotion, this negative emotion, will be taken badly, because our negative emotions, probably as we were children, as we were growing up, were taken badly. Maybe we were put in our rooms, we were locked in our rooms, we were, a variety of horrible things could have happened to us as children that made us believe any negative emotion, any difficult emotion that we experience is bad. And so therefore, anyone will see this side of ourselves, or this side of us, and deem it as bad. And if we are in a relationship or multiple relationships that are toxic, that don't hold space for our negative emotions or difficult emotions, then this repeats the cycle. And this is the horrible thing about toxic shame, is shame feeding shame. So we believe that we are unlovable, so then we seek the validation that we are unlovable, and we experience things that continuously validate the feeling that we are unlovable, therefore making us believe that we are unlovable. It's a horrible cycle that we trap ourselves in, or not even we trap ourselves in. We were, a lot of us were just put into as a coping mechanism for difficult situations as children, and we grow up with this belief. We don't know any different. We don't even remember a time where we believed that we were lovable or inherently lovable, especially when our worth can be taken from us at such a young age. that we don't even have we don't have memory at all of ever believing that we are worthy, ever believing that we are lovable. We've never really experienced unconditional love. And so having love as an adult is going to be so triggering and so threatening. Any feeling that we have that is negative, that is painful, is deeply vulnerable, because there's this wound, this wide open gash that we are covering, that we don't want anyone to see. And if somebody just pokes the wrong spot under our t-shirt, we will be in agony. And that agony that we feel is so vulnerable. And it's even worse to show somebody that side of ourselves and for them to keep poking it, for them to keep aggravating it, for them to just stick their whole hand inside and be like, my hand's not inside this wound. No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's horrible. It's horrible. And these toxic relationships, again, just validate our fear. And we even then will gaslight ourselves. We will manipulate ourselves to believe that, well, this is what I'm worth. So I'm going to accept this behavior. I'm going to carry on this relationship. This is normal. This, well, is better than my parents, so it's probably the best I'm ever going to get. But these beliefs are untrue. When we can show up for ourselves, when we can slowly start to hold space for ourselves, we can slowly start to hold space for the belief that we are lovable. And when we believe that we are lovable, we are not going to accept disrespect. We are not going to accept unloyalty. We are not going to accept gaslighting or manipulation. We are going to be able to have more discernment to show up in a relationship and pick out and point out, oh, that person is trying to play this game with me, and I'm not going to play it. I don't want to play it. And it's not then you starting to manipulate the situation, be like, well, now you need to learn how to love yourself, and I'm going to teach you how to love yourself so that way you can love me. No, that's also not going to work. Again, we need two human beings that are willing to show up for themselves, hold space for themselves, learn how to love themselves, that are willing to do all of that, and become a team and decide, hey, I'm going to try my best to show up for you. You're probably going to poke my triggers and I'm probably going to poke yours. Let's try our best to hold compassion for each other. Let's try our best to show up for each other and understand each other. And things are going to get messy sometimes. That is life. That's life. But the belief that you are unlovable, the belief that they are unlovable, the belief that anyone ever is unlovable is coming from toxic shame and is just not true at all. We need to learn through self-compassion that we are lovable. We need to learn how to name our emotions. I'm feeling anxious because of this. I am feeling really empty. I'm feeling really dull. I'm feeling really intense, restless, spacey, tight, terrified. We need to not just be like, I'm feeling sad. We need to name the emotions that we are actually feeling. I'm feeling envious. I'm feeling really, really guilty. I'm feeling whatever it is. We need to name our emotions. We need to be aware of ourselves. We need to be mindful about what our body is experiencing as well. Because if we cannot tap into our body and be like, I'm feeling this like intensity in my chest. I'm feeling this intensity in my legs. I'm feeling this anger in my head. I'm feeling whatever it is. When we can be mindful of ourselves and our emotions, we are creating space for those emotions to show up as they are and not just push them aside, not just push them away and be like, whatever, like, I don't want to feel this, so I'm just going to bottle it all up. I'm just going to push it down. I'm going to push it down. I'm going to push it down. We cannot do that. We need to allow our emotions to arise so that way they can release and we can settle ourselves back down into ourselves. We need to hold space for that emotion and comfort ourselves in it. Like, it's okay that I'm feeling this. It's all right that I'm feeling jealous. It's totally normal to feel jealousy. It's totally normal to feel ashamed. It's totally normal to feel envy. It's totally normal to feel guilty. Whatever it is, It is normal to experience that emotion because you are a human being and these emotions exist for a reason, and there's nothing wrong with them. It's only when you become consumed by them, taken over by them, that they become a problem. When they become toxic, that is a problem. Naming the emotion, experiencing the emotion is going to help that toxicity risk lessen. We then also need common humanity. We need kinship. We need relationship with other people that have been through similar things, or that we can freely and openly talk about our experiences with and be reminded that we are not alone. Be reminded that that envy is normal. Be reminded that that jealousy is normal. Be reminded that this experience is not a solo experience that no one else has ever had. Other people experience it as well. And if you have complex PTSD, childhood trauma of any kind, whether that's experience as a child or an adult, PTSD, anything that falls under that bracket, then having relationship with other people can be extremely vulnerable and extremely triggering and extremely scary, extremely threatening to the body as well. This is one thing that a lot of people don't really talk about, but vulnerability, when you grow up in an environment that you are not able to be vulnerable, vulnerability is deeply threatening and terrifying to the body. That's why a lot of people also push good people away and repeat the toxic relationship cycles. They're like, well, I don't deserve real love. I don't deserve unconditional love. This person forgave me for doing something bad. I don't deserve that. This vulnerability that I have to show up as or in is not comfortable to me. My body deems it as threatening. I'm going to pull away. I push that person away. I avoid. Right? So relationship may be really triggering, really difficult for a lot of people. That is totally normal, totally okay. We have to eventually get past that, but how we can get past that is through reading books about similar situations or experiences or mental health conditions that we can relate to, and remind ourselves that, people are writing books about this. People have experienced these things. I am not alone. Seeking out podcasts of this nature, people online that have experienced something similar to you. So that way you can know that you are not alone, basically. We need to know that we are not alone. For me, from my personal experience, when I read The Body Keeps the Score, there was a level of relief that washed over me knowing that I'm a statistic. I know that sounds really funny or really weird or really self-demeaning in some way, but I'm a statistic. About 1 in 6 girls experience what I have experienced, and that is only what a statistic is able to measure. The type of thing that I experienced is most likely immeasurable. So the amount of people that have experienced something similar to me is insanely high, which is insanely saddening, but that makes me confident enough to show up, record my experiences, record my emotions, put them on the internet because I know that I am not alone. And this idea that I am brave for doing so, I appreciate it. I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the messages that people send me, be like, "Oh, you're so brave for sharing your story." There's a huge part of me, and I've said this so many times, I am not sharing my story. I am, but I am not. There's so many people that relate to me. It's fucking insane. And so I'm sharing a story. I'm sharing my story, but it's a story in the mix of millions. And I know that I spent so long feeling completely alone, completely crazy, gaslighting myself into believing that it wasn't true, that to have somebody else be like, "No, I experienced the same thing," or "No, you're actually a statistic and it's pretty common," feels relieving. Oh, fuck, I'm not alone? I'm not the only one that's experienced this? That is why we need relationship. That is why we need kinship. That is why we need to know we are not alone. To relieve that feeling of loneliness, to relieve that feeling of isolation. For self-compassion, we next need to learn how to have a kind and open and accepting attitude towards ourselves. We need to work on our self-kindness. You can do that in so many different ways. A lot of people do enjoy positive affirmations, listening to uplifting podcasts, surrounding yourself with people that don't trigger you, surrounding yourself in situations that don't trigger you, surrounding yourself with people that add value to your life, remind you of your worth, great things to help with that self-kindness, and to be aware of those emotions. Be like, oh, it's okay that I feel this way. It's okay that I'm experiencing this. Giving ourselves grace and permission in these more difficult situations, reminding ourselves that we are human. And the first 2 steps to this feed into the 3rd step. And that 3rd step is going to help carry us in the first 2 steps as well. So we can't be kind to ourselves if we are struggling with toxic shame, if we don't have relationships and are self-isolating or feeling really lonely. We can't be kind to ourselves if we're not naming and addressing our emotions and holding space for our emotions. But we also can't hold space for our emotions and express our emotions if we're not having some level of kindness towards ourselves. We will spiral into the complete oblivion and abyss. And that's a horrible place to be in. We also can't not be kind to ourselves in friendship or relationship, because no one's going to want to be around us. We're going to be like, I hate myself all the time. I suck at this. I'm the worst, or like whatever. And a lot of people just going to be like, I don't want to be with a self-deprecating person all of the time. That drags me down. So all of these things feed into one another. And this is self-compassion. Self-compassion is a beautiful and needed thing to have love in your life. Because if you do not have a belief that you are lovable, you may have it logically, but if you do not feel it inside of your body, a healthy relationship is going to be so difficult to maintain. This is something that I am coming to terms with and deeply holding space for as well right now, is recognizing that all of these factors, all of these things that I've experienced in my life make it so beyond difficult for me to show up, for me to be a healthy adult, to show up in a healthy relationship, to hold space for another person, to be in a healthy relationship, because I've struggled and still struggle with many things that make it difficult for me to actually show up in a healthy relationship. And so although I want to be held, I want to be loved, I want to be accepted, I want a relationship, I want to hold space for another person, there are still so many aspects of myself that I need to address and hold space for. And if I cannot do that, then how in the hell am I going to handle when somebody else is triggering me? And of course, if somebody's triggering me in a toxic way, in a not so healthy way, then that's different. But it's normal to be triggered by your partner when you are in a relationship. They're going to say the wrong things sometimes, and vice versa. And that's also one thing that I recognize is I'm actually deeply terrified of being vulnerable. And although I can share my story and talk about things online, that's not what I find vulnerable. What I find vulnerable is somebody seeing the wreck that I become when I am triggered. The anger that surfaces, the fear that surfaces, the self-deprecating thoughts that surface. For somebody to see that side of me, for somebody to see me age regress, because that is a very real thing for adults that have experienced childhood trauma, is age regressing to an age that you experienced a lot of difficulty. So you basically go into a state as if you were a child. You can't regulate, you can't find yourself, you can't navigate the situation. You're lost, you're confused, you're angry, you're unable to be a regulated adult. Because, you probably didn't have a regulated adult telling you how to regulate yourself. And then this age regressive state is that childhood being not having a regulated adult. And what has been deeply healing for me is finding people and being with people that have seen this side of me and have held space for me, are very kind to me in this moment. And that has been deeply, deeply healing to know that Okay, like people out here like do want to help, you know, they do want to hold space for other people. And that may not be a long-term relationship that I end up being in for years and years and years, but it was still a person that gave me hope that somebody can hold space for this side of me. And somebody out there is able to hold space for you as well. And this is why I always encourage people to go out on dates. Being vulnerable is so scary, but having people in your life and putting yourself in situations, mind you, keep yourself safe, please, please, please. If you do struggle with toxic shame and have struggled with abuse, please be very mindful of yourself, your own vulnerability, and please just keep yourself safe. Please, please, please. Because I know for myself, I had like pushed down so much that I would just put myself in unsafe situations basically. And you know, many bad things happened in those situations. I also have experienced many toxic relationships because I didn't believe that I was lovable. But when you are doing the work, when you are learning to show up for yourself, when you are learning to be compassionate towards yourself, meeting people, interacting with people, sharing with people, being vulnerable with people in slow, minute ways is how you're going to be able to build that strength. Because these things make you stronger. They do not make you weaker. They make you so, so much stronger. Because if you are in a constant state of pain, a constant state of anxiety, worry, suppression, that is not making you strong. That's like going to the gym 24/7, constantly exerting your muscles and expecting your muscles to grow. They may a little bit, you know, like you might have a little bit of growth, but at the same time, you're basically just degrading yourself because you're not giving yourself the time, the nutrition, the ability to rest, to rejuvenate, to recover. And that is what self-compassion and self-love do. They help you recover from pain. They help you recover from difficulty. They help you become stronger because they give you time to breathe. They give you grace. They give you the ability to learn how to love and hold space for yourself. And without this, a healthy relationship will not be possible. But you are worthy of love. You are worthy of a beautiful partnership one day. You are worthy of so much. But we first have to learn the lesson that we are lovable, acceptable, worthy, includable, connected, whatever it is, whatever word there that we connect to. You are not wrong. You are not innately wrong. You are not innately disgusting or unworthy or unlovable or unacceptable. You are a human being that experiences the difficult emotions that are completely normal and healthy. You are a human that has probably experienced a lot of traumatic or difficult things in your life, and you need space and time to heal. You need space and time to love yourself. And I'm sending you so much love through the screen, through headphones, whatever device you are listening to this. Really, really hope that you enjoyed today's episode. If you could like and subscribe wherever you are listening to this. If you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify, rate the podcast 5 stars. Hit subscribe on YouTube. Share it with a friend if you found this useful and valuable content. And if you are looking for a self-compassion tool, I do have a year's worth of journal prompts linked down in the description box or show notes. 52 weeks of journal prompts, one session a week, each with about 8 to 14 questions inside, covering topics on trust, relationships, self-compassion, abundance, and some fun, whimsical, beautiful, cutesy questions in there as well, just to spark some creativity, play, and joy. Because we all need creativity, play, and joy in our lives. It helps us connect with that inner child that needs love. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, and I am so grateful for you for listening to this. Okay, bye.